I have a couple of kind of follow-up questions, but let me just say very briefly that a part of course, what you're describing based on the work that you do as both a novelist and as a doctor is you're also describing what it feels like when you're with a novel that is very important to you, right? In a sense that you are in this space, and when you return back to it over and over again, or you come to it for the first time, it should transform you, right? It should, you enter the book in one way, right? And the books that I think are my favorite books, they are favorites because it transformed me in a way when I was 22. It transformed me in a new way when I was 32, right? That in some ways, as I was listening to you, you were describing both things, right? These both aspects of the work that you do. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, and I think you use this word, or maybe I'm placing it into it, which is, it becomes a very intimate relationship, right? And I guess my question to you is, how do you sustain that intimacy, right?
I mean, with the book or the reader?
No, in the case, in this what we're talking about with the patient, right? Which is, because they are asking you of something, right? What you were saying is that they are in some ways bearing their own medical history, and what you're also saying, right, is that they're bearing their physical presence as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's an analogy that I use with my medical students, and it sort of came to me in the HIV epidemic when, you know, I was a young-ish physician. I was in my 30s, which you probably consider ancient at the time. I was a young man in a very distressing position of caring predominantly for young men my age, most lovely young men, who were dying. And I had nothing to offer in terms of a magic remedy. And these were the bravest souls. I mean, as a heterosexual male, I felt like I learned more about maleness and bravery from my gay patients than I learned in all my previous 30 years. And they just taught me the spectrum of maleness could include being a good friend to a woman, could be, you know, a healthy interest in the arts. You know, that you can wind up with a very narrow understanding of machoism, and you know.
Yeah. And
I was frustrated. I had no way to help them, and I got to know them very well. They were friends almost. I mean, I would go to all the funerals with my little boys, and you know, just watching them die, you know. And I remember one time in clinic, as I was looking at the list of people coming to see me that day, and there was the name of a young man who I hadn't seen in a while, and just as I thought, well, this would be great to see him. And just as I read his name, the phone rang, and it was his mother calling to say that he was too weak to come to the clinic, but not ill in any particular way that needed him to be in the hospital, and so he wasn't coming. And I had the sense that if I didn't do something different, I would never see this young man again. So out of my own need, my own sense of this being incomplete, I, that evening, drove out in the countryside in Tennessee to the trailer where he lived, and I was going for my purposes, to satisfy something unfulfilled in me. And yet when I got there, I found that my visit had the most profound effect on him and on the family, helping them to come to terms with what was inevitable, what was just days away, and you know, helping him to accept that, and also giving them the sense that I had not abandoned them, that my confines were not just the clinic, you know. And as I washed my hands and was leaving, and standing on the porch of that trailer, beautiful countryside, I remember thinking, wow, this is what the horse and buggy doctor of 200 years ago did so well. They could heal, in a sense, when they could not cure. And the analogy I use to make that distinction, healing and curing, if you were to imagine going back to your apartments or dorms, wherever you're living, and finding that the door is open, even though you locked it, and the lock is in splinters, and then you walk in and, you know, all your valuables are gone, your television, your computer, your music. You're devastated. You know, on one level, you've had a physical loss of stuff. That's a important to you, personally important to you. But there's also a second kind of injury. You have a tremendous sense of violation. Someone walked into your space, your sacred space, and took stuff. If the police then come by 20 minutes later and say, we caught the person, here is all your stuff back, at that moment you're cured, but you're not healed. Your sense of violation may be so strong that you will often leave that apartment building to go be somewhere else. You just cannot get over the violation. Well, I think all illness has those two components. There's a physical loss, and then there's a sense of violation. And we in Western medicine have gotten sloppy about addressing the spiritual violation. I mean, even if you break your little finger, at one level it's a mid-phalanx non-displaced fracture. At another level it's, God, why me? Why now? Just when I was heading to Tahoe to ski. There's always these two. And when the disease is cancer or HIV, the violation is huge. And I think we in medicine have gotten very good about addressing the physical violation and almost feeling like, well, we don't have to do anything about this. But I think the fundamental principle of medicine, unchanged since antiquity, my belief, is this relational aspect of another human being helping you with your woundedness, your spiritual woundedness, because most serious illness will, I want to say infantilize people, but that's not the right word. It makes them want the kind of reassurance that is being offered. Even if it's to say, this is probably going to be fatal, but I will be with you on this journey, and you're not going to have to wander through this alone. I'm here. So yeah, that's been my approach to medicine. I suspect